Jeffrey from Boise sent me a question that I thought was good enough. I'm just going to lead the show with it tonight. He said, I love the fact that y'all grind through college football content during the down months. It keeps me sane. But after listening to your shows, I've got to ask you, who's the team to beat this season, or your top team coming into 2025? I'll have a top team. I mean, if you do power ratings or you do rankings, either one of them, of course you're going to have a number one, Jeffrey, but number one is relative to what? The rest of the field. In other words, my number one in 2025 may have been like number 6 if that team existed in 2019 or vice versa. Anyway, I say all that to say this, Jeffrey. I don't remember the last time I would have said this. There's not a team to beat in college football in the preseason this year. There may be one that emerges. In fact, I would suspect one will emerge, or maybe 2 or 3 will emerge during the season. There's not a team to beat. The team to beat in my lifetime has been that team that you look at in August or even July or June or whatever, and that's that team you look at in the spring or the summer and you say, that team may not win the national championship, but whoever wins it, I think is going to have to go through that team. And normally it's a team that has a star at quarterback, or they're returning like 9 or 10 starters off a top 10 defense, or their entire offensive line and a dominant tailback's coming back, got a couple of wide receivers, each of whom you could see challenged for the Biletnikoff Award, something like that. That doesn't exist this year, Jeffrey. I'm not mad at you. I sound mad. I'm just a little fired up about it because that means we could see a season that goes off the rails, and in this case, derailment would be a good thing, goes off the rails early. You know, last year was insane, and we could be looking at more of the same, even more so this year. So there are the odds to win the national championship right now. If you're listening on podcast, just to give you a quick rundown, it's Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Oregon, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. LSU is a little bit lower than I thought they were because I haven't looked at this in a little while. So what? The team to beat is the team to beat Texas, is the team to beat Ohio State, the team to beat Georgia. They all got new quarterbacks. Those top 3 all got new quarterbacks. They're no better than 82nd in the country in returning production. Now, we had gotten conditioned for a little while to think, oh, returning production is not that big a deal for the Georgias of the world, or under Nick Saban for the Alabamas of the world, or Dabo's Clemson teams of the mid 20 teens and whatnot. And that was true. That is not necessarily the case anymore. That is not necessarily the case. You look at the ingredients the past 2 national champions have had. Ohio State won because they brought back a nucleus of guys that had been there for a while. Michigan, the year before, they won with a nucleus of guys. Now, you're still pretty new in this sort of portal era of redefining one's thinking about rosters because it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't but like 36 months ago, 48 months ago, that you still saw Kirby and Georgia winning, in some cases with a bunch of guys who were new starters, but that was when you could stack 2 or 3 deep of future Sunday players. Nobody's doing that anymore. So those returning production numbers, while they do have to be taken into the proper context, if you're 82nd or lower, I'm not calling you the team to beat. Like, you're not the preemptive favorite in anyone's eyes. You may warrant a top 5 consideration out of lack of other options out there. But if you're telling me that Texas is the team to beat, I could pick apart any of these. Like, I believe in Texas, relatively speaking. I believe in Georgia. I believe in Ohio State. Yeah, sure, I believe in them. But to the point where I'd call them the team to beat, look at this list. Texas, you got a second year in a row that you're having to replenish the core of your defensive line. I don't know definitively what Arch Manning's going to be. Hey, man, I don't know about Texas winning big games yet. They went over against Georgia last year. They got beat by Ohio State in the playoffs. So, like, do I know that yet? Georgia, quarterback, do I know? Do I know they can run the ball again? Do I know that they can play specifically on the defensive line the way that Kirby's teams need to be dominant, to be the team to beat? Ohio State, same thing, defensive line, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, entirely new team. There is no team to beat. So I remember back to last year. This is where this is all kind of going. I remember back to last year and how crazy some of the stuff we saw was. And then I think, well, that was kind of with somewhat of an established hierarchy, at least. We thought we knew. I mean, I would have looked at Ohio State's team going into last year, and I would have said that's the team to beat in the Big Ten. That's the team to beat. I think most of the country looked at Georgia going into the season last year and said, in the SEC, that's the team to beat. We weren't quite as high on Georgia last year, but we were the exception. The rule was Carson Beck's the Heisman favorite, Georgia's the favorite, and whether people were right or not, there was an established pecking order in the preseason, okay? So what if I would have told you in June or July of last year, hey, I think Bama's going to get out to a 4-touchdown lead against Georgia. They're going to go on to win, but they're going to get beat by Vandy the next week. Well, you would have said, yeah, maybe one of those things is going to happen, but both of those things aren't going to happen. Ha, 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 laugh him out of the building. Yeah, well, it happened. What if I would have told you Northern Illinois is going to beat Notre Dame, but wait for it, Notre Dame's going to go on to play for the national championship? You would have said one of them's going to happen. Both of those things are not going to happen. In fact, you probably would have told me in no world is Notre Dame going to play for a national championship. Ha, 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 laugh him out of the building. Well, it happened. What if I also told you Ohio State going to lose to Oregon, classic game, but then they're going to also lose as nearly a 3-touchdown favorite to Michigan, but then go on to win the national championship? Hey, quick timeout. Check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, make sure you do. It's free. It doesn't obligate you or sign you up for anything. It just helps us keep the channel free. All right, back to the show. You would have said, well, in what world do all of those things happen in the same year? Ha, 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 ha. Oh, by the way, Arizona State, second worst odds in the Big 12. They're going to go win the Big 12. They're going to win the conference championship. Indiana's going to go to the playoff. SMU's going to go to the playoff. Every one of those would have been laughed at, which goes back to Meemaw's age-old assertion, and that is there are no stupid predictions in college football. Because anyone at any given point in the history of this game who would have accurately predicted what was to come in a season in July, by the very definition of how insane this sport is, would have had to sound crazy in the summer. Think back to the most structured year, where everything went according to script. Even in those years, there's some craziness that you would have sounded ridiculous predicting in July. So if we start to wade out into the water a little bit and we don't have perceived structure, there is no team to beat, there is no really, there is no hierarchy to speak of, the likes of which we used to have. There's no Goliath to slay. There are no monsters that you have to overcome. They're just hurdles of differing degrees of height, but a bunch of folks could clear them if that's the case. And if we're not just missing an elite team ready to sprout up during the season, then you could have unforetold amounts of insanity, the likes of which we speak about, with seasons like 2007 in the past. I'd say 2021 was pretty crazy. You got Georgia winning a national championship after losing to the team they beat in the national title in the conference championship game. And then the road to that title game was just littered with upsets all over the place. I just think a team to beat or two may emerge. But Jeffrey, to answer your question, I don't know where the team to beat is. I mean, the top 5 of the top 6. Bradley, throw those odds up again, just to hammer this point home one more time. You go to FanDuel right now, the odds to win the national championship look pretty familiar. I just read them to you a second ago. 5 of those top 6 teams are starting new quarterbacks. There is no SEC team in the odds market right now with a win total above 9.5. Do you realize that? Now, that means there's probably going to be a whole lot of, relative competitive balance in the SEC, but that's the whole point. And then the other thing to take home is, where are the proven commodities at quarterback? Penn State, Clemson. That's really what we're talking about there. You know as well as I do that you look at Penn State and Clemson right now the same way you looked at Notre Dame up until last year. They may make the national championship game, but you're going to have to see it to believe it. I don't even have any problem with that kind of logic. Penn State has not earned the benefit of the doubt for us to say, hey, got a couple of 1,000-yard rushers, good offensive line, quarterback, like what they did in the portal at wide receiver, good defense happens there every year. Yeah, this is the year I think they'll make it to the title game. No, this is the year they may possibly make it there. They're not team to beat material. Penn State's not team to beat material. Clemson, Clemson has not played the caliber of ball at wide receiver or defense in a little while that you need to play to earn that benefit of the doubt. The difference is you've seen Clemson do it before, so it may be a little easier for you to buy Clemson, but be real. I think it was Chris Drew, I believe, the other day, was making the point that, hey, the most stable commodities, Penn State, for example, in the Big Ten, or Clemson in the ACC, they are these teams that nobody has a problem anointing right now. I'm doing it. Like with Penn State, I've got no problem telling you, hey, I think very highly of Penn State, and I've got far more questions about Ohio State. But you think I'm about to pick Penn State to win a national title before I pick Ohio State to do it again, just blindly? I will give benefit of the doubt to unproven players and coordinators all over the roster at Ohio State before I give it to Penn State. And the reason is because I've watched this sport for a long time. So that doesn't mean you can't break through. It just means that's the task. You've got to break through. And that's sort of the beauty of the setup right here. The setup is, the places where you do know the quarterback and you've got continuity on the coaching staff, or they upgraded the staffs, and Clemson and Penn State both did that. Even then, do you really believe they're going to win a national title? You make a lot of money if you do believe that.